The House of Silence. Cowan, a young man in his late 20s, began a new journey in his life. This small town, which he had never known before, was his destination. Its name was rarely mentioned online, and it was not famous in any way. However, the company that had accepted him for a job was located here, making it unavoidable for Cowan to work in this town. He took a long train ride for several hours, passing through fields, forests, and small villages, until the train finally arrived at the station in the middle of this small town. As he disembarked, the station, shaded by tall trees, gave him a sense of tranquility. This place was different from Bangkok, which was filled with hustle and bustle. Cowan felt relaxed but simultaneously experienced a sense of loneliness and detachment from what he was familiar with. In the afternoon, he began exploring the town. The narrow streets, lined with old shops, seemed as if time had stopped. There was no rush, no loud conversations. The streets were empty, with only a gentle breeze and falling leaves. After exploring the town for a while, Cowan began looking for a place to stay that would be convenient for his work commute. He searched several hotels but found the prices to be too high, exceeding his budget. Moving for a new job required a significant amount of money initially, so he had to be cautious with his spending. Cowan walked to the old market of the town, where he found a notice that seemed to be the solution to his problem: for rent, 2-story wooden house, affordable price, with 4 bedrooms, and a dog and cat in the house. This message immediately caught his attention due to the lower rent compared to other places he had seen. Moreover, a house with pets often felt warm and welcoming. He called the number on the notice. As soon as the line connected, he heard the voice of an elderly woman. "Hello, young man. I happen to have a room available in my house. Would you like to come and see it? The house is not far from this market. You can walk here comfortably." The elderly woman's voice was gentle and kind. Cowan felt at ease talking to her and agreed to visit the room immediately. She gave him directions, and the house was located at the end of a quiet alley, a bit away from the town center, but not too far. He followed the directions and found that the alley was very peaceful, with no traffic or crowds. Tall trees lined both sides of the path, providing shade. Cowan felt an unusual yet soothing tranquility. The house was a 2-story wooden building, old but charming. A golden Labrador dog lay curled up at the base of the stairs, while a small orange cat slept comfortably under the shade of a tree. The elderly woman, the owner of the house, came out with a warm smile. She wore an old but clean sweater and had the kind demeanor Cowan had hoped for. "Come in, dear. I'll show you the room," she said, inviting Cowan inside. Upon entering the house, Cowan's first impression was of a calm and warm atmosphere. The interior was decorated with old furniture, but everything was tidy. The house seemed to have been well maintained for a long time. The polished wooden floors and large windows letting in soft sunlight filled the house with natural light. The elderly woman introduced Cowan to the various rooms. "There are 4 bedrooms here. Currently, 2 are occupied. You would be the 3rd. She smiled. "They are quiet people, not very talkative, but they are good." Cowan felt more comfortable knowing there were others living there. Having housemates in a new place helped him feel more secure. The elderly woman led him to the living room, where 2 men sat on the sofa. One was quietly reading a book, and the other was gazing out the window. Their calm and motionless demeanor made Cowan feel uneasy, but he didn't pay it much attention, thinking it was just their nature. "This is Mr. Chai and Mr. Sith. They have been here for several years. They are quiet and like to be alone, but they are friendly," the elderly woman said with a smile. Cowan greeted them, but they did not respond. They continued to sit in the same position as if they hadn't heard her. Although Cowan was puzzled, he didn't think much of it, assuming it was just their way of being. When the elderly woman showed him his room, it was spacious and clean. Although the furniture was old, everything was in good working order. After seeing everything, Cowan decided to rent the room. He thought it would be a suitable place for him, both in terms of price and the tranquility he desired for rest. That night, Cowan fell asleep tired from the journey and adjusting to the new place, but he couldn't sleep soundly. Unsettling dreams began to disturb him from the start of his sleep. The dream was vague but filled with unease. He dreamt of the two men sitting in the living room of the house. They remained in the same position as he had seen during the day, but in the dream, they gradually turned to look at him with cold, penetrating gazes, as if trying to convey some message that Cowan couldn't understand. The sound of a cat's footsteps passing by his bed woke him from the dream. He lay there, breathing heavily and covered in sweat. The sound of the cat quickly disappeared, and he felt as though someone was watching him from the dark corner of the room. After a restless night, Cowan woke up feeling exhausted. The soft morning light streamed through the window, but his mind was still troubled. The images from the dream remained vivid, and the sound of the cat's footsteps still echoed in his head. He tried not to dwell on it and got up to prepare for work, but he still had an inexplicable sense of unease. As he walked through the living room, he noticed that the two men were still sitting in the same position as before. They remained silent, with no movement or indication of life. "Good morning," Cowan greeted again to confirm that everything was normal, but there was no response. The two men remained silent, even the slightest movement was absent. Cowan began to feel increasingly uneasy. He wondered if the dream had been merely a product of stress from the journey. But something in their demeanor made him uncomfortable. When he left the house, the elderly woman greeted him with a smile. "Did you sleep well, dear?" she asked kindly. "Not too bad, but I had some strange dreams," Cowan replied, hesitating. "Oh, don't worry. This house might be too quiet sometimes, which can lead to odd dreams," the elderly woman said with a soft laugh. "If you need anything, just let me know. I'm always here." Her words made Cowan feel that something might be wrong in the house, but he chose not to think too much about it and hurried off to work. The day at work went smoothly for Cowan, and there were no issues with his tasks. Yet, he continued to feel uneasy, accumulating from the previous night's experiences and the demeanor of the two men. After work, Cowan returned home feeling exhausted. As he entered the house, the pervasive silence made him feel even more heavy-hearted. The entire house seemed too quiet. The ticking of the wall clock sounded distinctly in this silence. When he walked into the living room, the two men were still sitting in the same positions as every other time he had seen them. It felt as if time had stopped in this house. Everything appeared unchanged, not even slightly. Cowan began to question why they never moved or did anything other than sit still all the time. Why had he never heard them speak or move? That night, Cowan tried to sleep, but strange noises began to emerge from various corners of the house. Sounds that should not be present when everything was supposed to be silent. There were rustling noises, as if something was moving under the floor or perhaps within the walls. The sound of the cat walking past his bed again made him look around the room, but he could not find the cat. The frightening silence enveloped the house as if something was hidden beneath the surface of the calm. Unable to bear the growing suspicion and fear, Cowan decided to uncover the truth. He began to explore the house during the dead of night when everything was at its quietest. He went back to the living room, and this time, he noticed something abnormal. The two men were still seated in the same positions, but upon closer inspection, Cowan saw that their skin was drier and more rigid than normal, as if no longer the skin of living people. Small cracks on their faces and arms indicated something that shouldn't be real. Cowan realized that they were no longer alive, they had been stuffed. His heart raced with fear as he slowly backed away. The elderly woman stood at the stairs, holding a small syringe filled with clear liquid, and whispered into his ear from behind. "You must be starting to wonder," she said, moving closer and injecting the syringe into his neck. Cowan quickly turned around. "It's time for you to stay here too, like them." "What are you doing?" Cowan asked with a trembling voice, but before he could respond, he felt dizzy and lost consciousness immediately after being injected by the elderly woman. When he woke up, he found himself bound in a pitch-dark basement. Flickering lights revealed shelves filled with strange collectibles, including animals that were stuffed in natural poses. The elderly woman's voice came from the dark corner of the room. "I know you will keep wondering, dear, but now you are part of this place too. Her voice was laced with a chilling coldness. Colin turned to the sound and saw the elderly woman approaching the light. The truth was now evident. He had become the next resident of this house, a place where individuals were preserved for the elderly woman's macabre collection. The cold realization that he had been lured into this trap by the elderly woman's seemingly kind and welcoming demeanor haunted him. The feeling of betrayal and despair overwhelmed him. The House of Silence had claimed yet another victim, and now Colin was doomed to join the others in their eerie, timeless state. Colin's heart pounded in his chest as he struggled against the ropes binding him. The basement was filled with eerie silence, interrupted only by the soft rustle of the elderly woman's movements. Her shadow loomed over him as she approached with a cold, calculating gaze. Why? Why are you doing this? Colin managed to ask, his voice weak and strained. The elderly woman's lips curled into a sadistic smile. It's quite simple, really. This house, you see, is special. It preserves the essence of its residents in a way that defies time. I have been doing this for many years, creating my own collection of timeless guests. The tranquility and quietness of this house allow them to remain in a state of eternal calm. Colin's mind raced as he realized the gravity of his situation. The two men, the dog, and the cat he had seen in the house were not just housemates, they were past victims, preserved for eternity. The dream he had experienced, the unsettling feelings, and the odd behavior of the housemates all made sense now. Please, let me go, Colin begged, his voice breaking. I'll do anything. The elderly woman shook her head, her expression unmoved. I'm afraid it's too late for that. The process is irreversible once you've been chosen. Besides, it's not just about preserving them, it's about maintaining the balance of this house. You were brought here for a reason. As Colin's fear intensified, he saw movement in the shadows. He recognized the figures of the two men who had been in the living room. They were now more animated than before, although their movements were unnatural and jerky. The same coldness that had overtaken their faces seemed to envelop their entire being. Colin's struggles became more desperate. There has to be another way. There must be something I can do. The elderly woman's face softened momentarily, but only with a hint of false sympathy. I'm sorry, dear. You'll have your time to understand soon enough. But for now, it's time for you to join the others. She stepped closer, preparing to administer another dose of the drug that would finalize his transformation. Just then, a noise interrupted the scene. A loud crash came from upstairs, followed by hurried footsteps. The elderly woman's expression changed from calm to alarmed. What's happening? She muttered, clearly disturbed. Colin seized the opportunity. He strained against the ropes, using the moment of distraction to loosen them. With a final effort, he managed to break free. He quickly scanned the basement for anything that could aid in his escape. His eyes fell upon a rusted pipe in the corner. He grabbed the pipe and used it to force open a small window that led to the outside. With adrenaline fueling his movements, he clambered through the window and out into the night. He ran through the dark alley, not daring to look back, driven by the instinct to survive. Mr. Quinn, are you inside? The voice was familiar. It was Mr. Sack, Quinn's boss, who had brought him to work in this town. Quinn felt a wave of relief. His heart, which had been racing with fear, began to calm down. Help me. I'm here. Quinn called out horror. The door to the house opened quickly, and Mr. Sack rushed in to support KW. You're safe now. I'm here to help you. Quinn looked at the old woman who was now standing still in the corner of the room. She looked at him with an empty gaze, as if waiting for punishment. Quinn felt relieved that Mr. Sack had arrived just in time. He thought his nightmare was coming to an end. Mr. Sack helped Quinn out of the house and towards the cool night air made him feel like he could breathe again. Quinn sat down on the car seat and closed his eyes in exhaustion. His heart slowly calmed down, and he thought he was safe. But as the car began to move, a strange feeling started to return, as if something was wrong. Quinn opened his eyes and looked at Mr. Sack driving the car. Are we going to the hospital? Quinn asked with curiosity. Mr. Sack was silent for a moment before turning with a strange smile. Don't worry. We're going where you're sup. Those words made Quinn shiver. His heart began to race again as he started to realize that What do I? Mr. Sack chuckled softly before revealing the horrifying truth. You think I came to help you? You're here because Quinn stared at him in disbelief. I've been working with that old lady for a long time. She likes to collect new toys. I'm just the one who provides them for her. She's never complained. She said she needed someone suitable, so I brought you here. The horrifying truth made Quinn almost unable to believe his ears. Sack wasn't a helper but a co-conspirator who had planned to trap him from the start. Everything had been carefully orchestrated. You're insane. Quinn shouted in anger and tried to open the car door to escape, but Mr. Sack had locked all the doors. He simply chuckled softly and continued driving through the darkness. Don't bother, Quinn. You're the next one. Everyone here has been through it before. You'll be with us forever, Mr. Sack said in a calm, matter-of-fact tone, as if it were completely normal. Quinn began to realize that there was no escaping this fate. Whether it was the old woman or Sack, everyone in this town was part of a horrifying scheme. He hadn't really survived, he had merely walked into the final trap. The sound of the car wheels grinding over the empty road echoed in Quinn's ears, like a signal of something waiting for him up ahead.